You found Orivyn rise. That means you were chosen. They never told you the truth. They couldn't, because the moment you saw yourself clearly, the illusion they depended on would begin to dissolve. Since the beginning, you felt it, that silent tension when you entered the room, that shift in the atmosphere when your voice joined the conversation. It wasn't just in your head. Your energy was always different. It didn't just vibrate, it disrupted. You were never meant to be one of them. You were born to change everything they thought was fixed. You didn't just carry light. You were light. And to those who survived in darkness, your very presence was a threat. You were marked from the start, not with symbols or scars, but with a kind of soul frequency they couldn't fake, duplicate, or suppress. And even before you could speak it, your light said everything. That's why they tried to silence you. That's why they tried to break your spirit early. But you're still here. You're still glowing. And now that you've found this message, know this, it wasn't by accident. You're being called forward. This is a space created for you, for your remembrance, for your return, for your rising. Watch this video until the end and comment your warmest wishes along with 777, a sacred key that ignites the frequencies of manifestation. Because when your words are aligned with truth, the universe moves. Let this moment be one of power, one of release, one of activation. Since childhood, you confuse people, not because you were doing something wrong, but because you carried an essence that didn't conform. You weren't loud. You were potent. You weren't rebellious. You were raw truth, and that made people uncomfortable. Teachers didn't know what to do with you. Friends didn't fully understand you. Family tried to fix what they thought was misbehavior, when in reality, they were reacting to what they couldn't comprehend. You weren't broken. You were awakening. And even then, long before you had language for it, they knew you were different. The way you questioned what others accepted. The way you sensed lies even when everyone else clapped along with them. The way your silence pierced through noise. These weren't flaws. These were indicators. They marked you as one who remembered something others forgot. One who came not to fit in, but to wake the sleeping. What frightened them the most was not that you would fail, but that you might succeed. That you might fully embody the light you carried. That you might stop dimming yourself for comfort. That you might remember who you are, because when the chosen rise, structures fall. And you were never meant to uphold the old. You were meant to usher in the new. But the road was never easy. That's part of the design. Because light forged without pressure is a flicker. But the light that survives storms becomes a flame that guides others home. Every betrayal, every heartbreak, every silence you endure became part of your training. Not to harden you, but to refine you. You learned who you were by discovering who you were not. And in every moment they tried to bury you, they forgot one thing. Seeds grow in the dark. This is why they try to make you feel small. This is why they called you too sensitive, too intense, too much. Because your light wasn't just for comfort, it was for clarity. You didn't just shine, you revealed. And in a world that survives by deception, revelation is the enemy. But you kept shining anyway, even when it hurt, even when it was lonely, even when no one clapped for your truth. Your energy was never passive. It was catalytic. You didn't just join the system, you cracked it. And every time you walked into a space with integrity, you exposed a rot hiding beneath the surface. You saw what others were trained to ignore. You felt what others learned to numb. You questioned what others blindly followed. That's not dysfunction. That's divine intelligence. The reason they fought you so hard wasn't because you were weak. It's because you were powerful and you didn't even know it yet. And if you had known it too early, they wouldn't have stood a chance. So they tried to delay you, distract you, diminish you. But even that became your strength. Because now, you don't carry untested faith. You carry lived wisdom. You carry proof. And still, you wonder, why did so many turn against me? Why did they ghost me? Why did they speak behind my back, reject me, isolate me? The truth is, your presence triggered a response to them that their ego couldn't handle. It wasn't you they hated. It was the part of themselves they abandoned long ago. You were the mirror. You were the reminder. You were the return of something sacred. And not everyone was ready for that. But you kept moving. You kept healing. You kept rising. Quietly, privately, sometimes painfully. But with every step, your light became clearer, brighter, sharper, until it stopped being just something you carried. It became who you are. You no longer search for the light. You are the light, and now they sense it. Even those who haven't spoken to you in years. They feel the shift. They feel your frequency changing. They don't know what it is, but something in them knows you're no longer who you were. You're no longer apologizing for your power. You're no longer asking for permission to be real. You're no longer carrying what isn't yours. You're no longer bound to the cage they built for your silence. You are rising. You are remembering. And you are no longer afraid of your own glow. There's a reason your light disturbed them even when you said nothing. You didn't have to speak to be noticed. Your presence alone activated things in others. Unhealed wounds, buried guilt, hidden envy, long-forgotten truths. The moment you entered, the mask started to tremble. And because most people built their lives around illusions, your authenticity was like an earthquake to their carefully arranged stories. They didn't know how to name what they were feeling, so they turned it against you. They labeled you cold, distant, arrogant, dramatic, rebellious, anything to avoid facing their own discomfort. But what they really felt was this: you made them feel exposed. You walked in a room and brought the light with you, not the kind that flatters, but the kind that reveals, not the soft glow of comfort, but the fierce shine of truth. And truth can either liberate or enrage, depending on how long someone's been running from it. You didn't ask to be this. You were simply born this way. You didn't plan to awaken the room. You were just trying to exist. But even your silence speaks. Even your eyes see too much. Even your intuition interrupts the show. You couldn't fake it, and you couldn't ignore it. And that's what made you different. That's what made you dangerous. Not to those who are aligned with truth, but to those who have built their power on lies. And what's remarkable is that you didn't retaliate. You didn't strike back with the same darkness. You learned how to transmute, how to take the stones they threw and turn them into altars, how to take the rejection and turn it into refinement, how to bleed, but not poison, how to walk alone, but not turn bitter. This is not weakness. This is divine strength. Your light was never about dominance. It was about remembrance. You were never trying to be above anyone. You were just trying to live your truth, even when it cost you everything, even when it meant walking away from people you loved, even when it meant starting over again and again. You kept choosing light, not the aesthetic version, not the filtered version, but the raw, unglamorous, uncomfortable version of light that costs more than it pays, at least at first. And now, something has changed. You're starting to realize that all those breakdowns weren't curses. They were clearings. All those endings weren't failures. They were redirections. Every time you lost someone, something deeper was trying to reach you. Every closed door, every unanswered text, every sudden silence. All of it was rerouting your spirit back to its original code. Because you weren't meant to blend in. You were meant to blaze. You weren't here to survive the darkness. You were here to challenge it. You weren't sent to maintain harmony. You were chosen to disturb the lie. And that's why your light felt so disruptive. Because it came to break patterns, not decorate them. It came to dismantle, not decorate decay. Your light wasn't made in temples. It was forged in wilderness. It was formed in the silent nights when no one saw your pain. It was born in the moments when you sat with your truth while the world kept spinning around its illusions. That kind of light doesn't flicker when the wind changes. It doesn't fade when people leave. It doesn't apologize to be accepted. It stands. It holds. It glows, even if no one claps. There's a war going on, but it's not the one you see on the outside. It's internal, energetic, dimensional. And in this war, your light is the weapon. Your clarity is the sword. Your awareness is the shield. You don't have to scream to be effective. You don't have to fight like them to win. Your presence, when aligned, is enough to shift the frequency of any room. And that's what they feared. That's why they tried to confuse you, make you doubt yourself, distract you with illusions of lack, fear, shame. Because a chosen one who knows who they are cannot be controlled. You were never meant to be tamed. You were never designed to be pleasing. You were created to activate, to awaken, to embody. And that's exactly what you're doing now. Not because anyone gave you permission, but because your soul is done waiting. And don't mistake your softness for submission. Don't confuse your compassion for compliance. You are still love, but now you're love with a boundary. You're love with discernment. You're love that says, I see you, but I will not shrink for you. That's evolution. That's maturity. That's mastery. You've seen too much to go back. You've healed too much to pretend. You've remembered too much to stay silent. The darkness knows it. The old world senses it. And that's why things have been intensifying. Because your light has reached a level that no longer tolerates what once broke you. You're not the same. And you're not going back. There comes a moment in every chosen one's path where they no longer seek validation for the weight they carry. You've passed through that moment. You walked the fire long enough to realize the fire wasn't trying to consume you. It was trying to cleanse you. It didn't come to destroy your essence, but to burn away everything that wasn't truly yours. Your light didn't come without cost. It demanded silence, solitude, long seasons of not being understood. It required you to release people who couldn't meet your truth, even when your heart wanted to hold on. It made you shed identities, beliefs, and attachments like old skins that no longer fit. And each time something or someone left, your soul whispered, keep going. You're not losing, you're aligning. They couldn't follow you here, not because they were bad, but because their story wasn't meant to carry the same weight. You were an anomaly. The one who carried the generational burdens, the one who saw what others ignored, the one who felt before words were even spoken. That's not easy. That's not comfortable. But that's the call. And it doesn't come to everyone. You didn't become this by accident. Your spirit was initiated through experiences most people never survive. Emotional abandonment, spiritual betrayal, physical exile. But still you rose. You adapted. You transmuted every setback into insight, every wound into wisdom, every delay into preparation. They underestimated how deep your roots go, how many lifetimes you've trained for this, how many battles you've already fought in realms unseen. What they thought was weakness in you was really strength refined by grace. What they mocked as sensitivity was really divine radar, a perception that pierced beyond what was shown. You were made to feel deeply because you were made to heal deeply. And now, that healing has become a frequency, a resonance, a radiant field that either awakens or exposes those around you. This is why people are drawn to you and afraid of you at the same time. They feel safe in your presence, but also uneasy in their masks. They crave your light, but fear what it might reveal. You represent possibility, and possibility threatens limitation. You represent truth, and truth threatens control. They don't know whether to follow you or silence you, so they oscillate between admiration and resentment. But it no longer matters, because you've stopped waiting to be understood. You've stopped asking for permission. You've stopped dimming to fit in. You've come to understand something vital. Your light doesn't need approval to be effective. It just needs alignment. And now that you're aligning, things are shifting at levels most people can't comprehend. The old patterns are collapsing. The illusions are dissolving. The noise is thinning. And beneath all of it, there's a stillness rising in you. A knowing, not from your mind, but from your soul. A knowing that says, this is who I've always been. This is what I came to do. And this time, I will not betray myself for comfort. You've stepped into a season of spiritual leadership. Not the kind that needs a pulpit or a platform, but the kind that transforms simply by being. Your life is a transmission. Your energy is a message. Your journey is a mirror. And those who are meant to find you will be drawn. Not because you marketed yourself, but because your frequency called to them in a language older than words. There are people right now awakening because you dare to speak. There are lives being mended because you refuse to abandon your truth. There are timelines being rewritten because you finally said no to what used to enslave you. You're not just healing yourself. You're creating templates for others to do the same. And you may not see the impact yet. You may not receive the recognition. But the universe doesn't run on applause. It runs on alignment. And in alignment, Every act becomes sacred. Every word becomes seed. Every boundary becomes a prayer. You're not waiting for your reward. You're embodying it. This is divine rebellion, not against people, but against the patterns that keep people small. You're not trying to destroy others. You're liberating yourself. And in doing so, showing others that liberation is possible, that they don't have to stay in roles that no longer fit, that they don't have to shrink to be loved, that they don't have to choose survival over authenticity. Your light terrifies those who benefit from control. That's why they try to confuse you. That's why they try to distract you. That's why they fed you stories of lack and fear and punishment. But somewhere in the chaos, your soul remembered. You remembered you were not born to conform. You were born to awaken. You were not sent to compete. You were sent to restore. And now you're doing exactly that. There's no turning back. The path ahead may still carry trials, but the difference now is you're walking awake, aware, aligned, no longer asking why me, but standing in the fullness of course me. You are the pattern breaker, the cycle ender, the light bringer, and your very existence is prophecy fulfilled. When your light began to pierce through their illusions, it didn't just disturb them, it exposed them, not because you meant to cause harm, but because your mere presence revealed what was hidden. This is the untold consequence of divine illumination. It acts as a mirror, and mirrors terrify those who spend a lifetime hiding behind masks. People you loved turned distant. Rooms you used to feel safe and began to feel hostile. Old friends became silent, uncomfortable around you, as if your evolution was a betrayal. But it wasn't betrayal. It was a shift in resonance. You started to vibrate on a frequency that made their shadows flinch. They said you changed. They said you were acting different. They tried to shrink you back into your old self because that version was easier for them to manage. They missed a version of you who didn't know their own power, who tolerated manipulation in the name of peace, who dimmed their brilliance so others could shine comfortably. But that version of you is gone, and it's never coming back. You see it now, don't you? The darkness never wanted you silent because you were weak, but because you were dangerously awake. Your light was not just inconvenient. It was destabilizing. It cracked the foundation of lies, secrets, and codependency. Your authenticity exposed dysfunction. Your self-love threatened control. Your joy without permission looked like rebellion to those who depended on your misery to feel superior. It wasn't just people. It was the entire system of beliefs you inherited. The ones that told you to be small, be nice, be silent, be grateful for crumbs. The doctrines that made you equate suffering with virtue, that made you feel guilty for dreaming too big or loving yourself too loudly. But your soul was never designed for servitude. It was built for sovereignty. And now here you are, no longer seeking entry into spaces that can't contain your light, no longer shrinking in the presence of authority that has no real wisdom, no longer asking to be seen. You become the seer. You become the one who recognizes the sacred in silence, the divine in detachment, the power in saying no. You were never meant to be liked by everyone. You were meant to be remembered by those who are ready. Your path isn't about approval, it's about alignment. And alignment will always cost you something. The false, the comfortable, the shallow, the performative. But what you gain in return is truth, freedom, peace, power. And here's something they never told you. Your light isn't just for the world. It's also for yourself. You deserve to bask in it. You deserve to be nurtured by the same energy you extend so generously to others. You spent lifetimes pouring into vessels that could never hold you. Now it's time to pour into your own well, to sip from the divinity that flows from within. They tried to convince you that your intuition was wrong, that your dreams were foolish, that your visions were hallucinations. But everything they tried to bury is growing roots. Everything they mocked is blossoming. Everything they feared is being fulfilled. Your life is becoming the evidence. They called you intense, dramatic, too sensitive. But those were just labels to dismiss the fire they couldn't contain. They couldn't understand why you cried when others laughed, why you withdrew when others partied, why you questioned what they blindly accepted. Because your soul was tuned to a higher frequency, a frequency that didn't crave validation but resonance. You don't need everyone to understand you. You just need to understand your mission. The rest is noise. The rest is training. Even your delays were rehearsals for what you're becoming. Even your heartbreaks were divine redirections, pulling you away from counterfeit connections toward your sacred destiny. There's power in being misunderstood. It forces you to find clarity within. It pushes you to align with your higher self instead of external expectations. It builds spiritual stamina. And that's what you've been doing, building, not in the visible world, but in the unseen realms where legacy is formed. Now, that foundation is ready, and the world will feel it, not through spectacle, but through presence, through the way you enter a room, through the words you speak, through the silence you carry. Your very existence is now a frequency that either activates or repels, and both are gifts. Let the repelling happen. Let the leaving happen. Let the discomfort rise. You didn't come here to be digestible. You came here to be divine. There's no crown without separation, no light without contrast, no birth without pain. And yet you chose this. Your soul volunteered, not because it would be easy, but because it would be sacred, because someone had to carry the torch. Someone had to break the pattern. Someone had to walk first so others could follow. You are that someone. Not because you're perfect, but because you are willing. And in a world addicted to comfort, willingness is revolution. You're not lost. You're not broken. You're not too much. You're simply ahead of your time. By now, you've probably noticed how often you've been the one who walks away while others stay. How often you've had to rebuild yourself in silence, behind closed doors, while the world moved on without noticing. But what the world didn't see was a transformation, the alchemy of your soul turning every loss into light, every betrayal into clarity. You didn't just survive their darkness. You became the contrast that proved there was another way. While they clung to control, you chose release. While they worshiped conformity, you surrendered to truth. And while they tried to mold you into something digestible, you emerged as something sacred, untamable, and whole. They called it rebellion. But it was your liberation. This is what your light does. It doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't fight for approval. It simply exists, and in doing so, disturbs the comfort of those still clinging to illusions. They wanted you to dim, to bend, to comply. But every time you chose your truth, every time you spoke what others only dared to whisper, your light expanded. And that expansion threatened the fragile towers they built with denial. But your light was never for their approval. It was for awakening. You were the crack in the system, the breath of wind that topples silent empires. Not because you planned it, but because your frequency dismantles anything false just by being near it. You are a living reminder that it is possible to rise without stepping on others, to speak truth without hate, to love deeply without losing yourself. And so they feared you, not for what you did, but for who you are. Your essence cannot be mimicked. Your knowing cannot be taught. Your presence cannot be replaced. And those still operating in the darkness of ego feel that deeply, even if they can't name it. So they try to isolate you, to label you, to cast you as the villain in their stories. But what they didn't understand was that isolation only sharpened your sight. That silence only strengthened your voice. That solitude became your sanctuary, and your wilderness became holy ground. You didn't break. You evolved. You didn't disappear. You recalibrated. You didn't fail. You redefined success on your terms. The pain wasn't punishment. It was refinement. Every closed door purified your intent. Every betrayal burned away your need for validation. Every season of loneliness became an initiation into the realm of divine purpose. You weren't born to blend in. You were born to illuminate the way for others still searching for themselves. You see them now, those who are just beginning to awaken, the ones who look at you with that mixture of fear and longing, the way you once looked at those who walked ahead of you. You recognize the trembling in their voice, the questioning in their eyes, and you don't rush them. You don't force them, because now you know light is not a weapon. It's an invitation. And yours? Yours is powerful enough to guide cities of souls home. The darkness that once frightened you now feels familiar, not because you become like it, but because you've mastered how to walk through it. You've learned to navigate the shadows without becoming them. You've realized that healing doesn't mean you never feel pain again. It means pain no longer controls you. And that is terrifying to the old world. Because healed people can't be manipulated. Awake people can't be deceived. Empowered people can't be bought. That's what your journey has been about all along. Not perfection, but sovereignty. A return to your original essence before the world told you who to be. Before the trauma rewired your nervous system. Before the guilt, the shame, the smallness. You've peeled it all back, layer by layer, until what remained was real, undeniable, holy. And now your presence is prophecy. You don't have to prove your worth. You've embodied it. You don't have to chase purpose. You've become it. You don't have to defend your light. It speaks louder than any word ever could. What they tried to destroy, they only made stronger. What they rejected, the universe has embraced. What they tried to silence has become a roar across generations. Because your light wasn't just for today. It's eternal, echoing across timelines, calling forth the others who carry the code. You were never alone. Just early. You didn't fail. You were being forged. And now that you see the truth, there's no turning back. The illusions have shattered. The masks have fallen. The fog has lifted. You've stepped into the light fully, not as a visitor, but as its guardian. There will be more battles. There will be more tests. But now you face them with clarity, with armor made of knowing, not borrowed beliefs, but lived truth, not empty rituals, but divine embodiment. You have become the very thing they feared you would be, free. And freedom, dear soul, is the beginning of everything they told you was impossible. There is a reason why you were always the one to notice what others ignored, why you could sense shifts in energy, why you felt heavy in certain rooms, why you were drained by certain people. You were never meant to numb your perception to match the world. You were meant to expand it, to awaken others to what they had long forgotten. You were never made to fit into structures built from fear and ego. You were designed to dissolve them, not with anger, but with presence. And your presence has already begun its sacred work. The people you meet now are different. The experiences, though intense, feel aligned. The signs are clearer. The resistance, though still present, no longer paralyzes you. This is the emergence. This is what it means to carry divine light through a darkened world. But this isn't about superiority. This is about responsibility. You carry a sacred frequency, not to be admired, but to be activated. In you, others find the courage to begin again. In your words, others hear their own forgotten truth. In your silence, others remember the sound of their own soul. That is the real reason they feared you. Not because of your voice, but because of what it awakens. Not because of your difference, but because of the mirror you become. You stopped apologizing for your existence. You no longer explain away your knowing, your visions, your sense of timing. You've come to trust that when something feels off, it is that when your soul says go, you move, that when your light grows too bright for some, it's simply illuminating what they haven't dealt with. And now the world is shifting. Structures are crumbling. Systems are unraveling. What once held power through fear is breaking down under the pressure of rising consciousness. And in this chaos, you are calm. You don't need all the answers. You are anchored in something deeper than logic. Truth that cannot be argued, only lived. The truth that your light isn't just a beacon. It's a timeline, a bridge, a living map for others to cross. And your path, filled with trials and initiations, has not been for nothing. It's been encoded into your very presence. Your footsteps leave energetic imprints. Your breath carries remembrance. Your decisions recalibrate more than you know. You are not the hero of a story. You are the activation point in a divine unfolding. And now, you are finally meeting others who speak your language, not with words, but with resonance. You recognize them before they speak. You feel the pull of your soul tribe drawing nearer, not because you're broken and need fixing, but because the time has come to unify the scattered sparks of light into something unstoppable. They feared your light when you were alone, but now you're no longer alone. Now, the chosen are gathering, not to build an empire, but to resurrect a forgotten harmony, to walk as reminders, to shine where others have dimmed, to love where others have feared, to rebuild not what was, but what always should have been. Your path has not ended, it's expanding. The more you step into your light, the more others remember theirs. The more you stand tall, the more the shadows retreat. Not because you fight them, but because you no longer feed them. This is what it means to be chosen. Not ease, not glory, but clarity, truth, legacy. You don't need to prove anything. You just need to keep walking, keep shining, keep trusting that every breath you take in alignment is collapsing timelines of oppression and writing new blueprints of freedom. They tried to extinguish your light, but they forgot light is not flame. It is a force. It is a signal. It is eternity speaking through you, and it cannot be dimmed. You have always been the shift. You are fulfillment of prophecy. You are the evidence that the darkness never won. They knew this day would come. The day your light would rise so high, their shadows would have nowhere left to hide. And that day is now. If this message found you, let it rest in your spirit. Until we meet again, stay awake, stay chosen,